也没那么差啊。
What's up, everyone? What we're reviewing for you today is the most expensive blade of 2026. This is the one and only the Fan ZhenDong Gold Label. The price has already been driven up to 1900 US. Let's see how this blade actually performs. As for the specific specs, you can probably find those online. It's an outer ALC blade with a blue airlaid carbon structure. The thickness is 5.66 millimeters. For this blade, we started by putting DO9C on both sides. Later on, we switched the forehand rubber to the H3 National Blue. We'll be pitting it against the Golden Viscaria, the regular Viscaria, and the Fan ZhenDong ALC. So, with light touch, this blade feels really crisp. Especially when I'm using it for forehands with the DO9C, the entire surface of the blade feels very firm and stiff. When you hit it, you get this crisp, popping sound. As I start to put more power into it, this blade has excellent stability and a great sense of initial ball speed. So, as we gradually ramp up our power to a medium level, the overall quality of the shot is actually pretty good. But you can already clearly feel that the trajectory is already starting to flatten out. But the quality of the shot is still pretty decent. But you can already feel it. The power just dies off a bit too much. I feel like it's not that powerful. The second bounce doesn't have much arc. And here's what you'll actually find. So with this blade, you really have to go for a full, powerful swing. Otherwise, the quality of the shot just isn't that high. So I have to really wind up and put all my power into the shot. The trajectory just barely reaches the baseline. Otherwise, the ball's trajectory is just really short. Basically, with a lot of shots, even after we put a lot of power into it, the ball just skims over the net. But it just doesn't quite reach the baseline. This kind of ball is super easy for the opponent to defend. So, it just doesn't put enough pressure on the opponent at all. And when we try to add power and generate spin, it doesn't really generate much spin either. And this is with a relatively fast rubber DO9C on it, so it's a rubber that's relatively easy to penetrate. From mid to far distance, it's got no second bounce, no spin, and there's no power. From mid to far court, it just feels like a stiffer version of the Viscaria, so it's really easy for the ball to just drop into the net. Your loop is way more aggressive than mine. So, when we were using it, you have to be really careful to create that arc. The overall quality of the shot is actually not that high. So, my opponent doesn't really feel that much power from my shots. Instead, when my opponent loops the ball back at me, I get pushed back so easily, and the opponent doesn't even feel that much power coming from my shot. Let's my training partner tell everyone what he thinks of this blade. You've got to hit through the ball with impact. He just has to go for it to complete that swing. So you can't play it like you're using a Hurricane, you know, with that kind of closed off, brushing motion. Have to really whip it. It's all about that whipping motion, that's the feeling you're going for. The ball you scoop out with a softer touch. It's like you have to play it like a tensor rubber. It's all about that whipping motion, that's the feeling it gives you. But the thing is, it just loses power the harder you hit it. It feels great, but the harder I smash, the less power it has, but it feels great. But the thing is, it just doesn't have that killer shot. The feedback in the hand is excellent. But the problem is, the quality of the shot just isn't there. The feedback you get is super clear. Now, this is different from just playing defensively. Instead, it feels a bit soft. You get a really clear feel for the ball. Plus, The trajectory of the first bounce of the ball is really full and arcing. What I mean is that the transition speed of your stroke will be excellent. Alright, second test with this blade. We switched to the Hurricane, because with D09C, we've always felt that the quality isn't actually that high. I was starting to suspect it was a problem with the rubber. When we first started using the H3 rubber, it feels like the whole blade becomes much stiffer. With light strokes, it feels incredibly thin and crispy, almost like a piece of paper. It's incredibly crisp, and it's really loud. When you're just blocking and using your opponent's pace, the overall feel is still very good. Both its forgiveness and directional control are excellent. And it feels quite hard. The arc is still a bit short. It's high, but after it lands on the table, the ball still doesn't travel very far. When I step back and really put some power into the loop, that crisp feel is still definitely there. Compared to the 09C, after I switched to the Hurricane rubber, the entire blade feels much denser and more solid. It feels like it'll be more resilient when you play with it, but as I gradually put more power into it, I feel like the core just can't quite push the ball out. It just doesn't have much power. So, it feels like the tuning on this one is that classic hard on the outside, soft on the inside type. It feels like the power just can't get out. This makes you feel like the harder you hit, the more this blade seems to just kill your power. It feels noticeably weak. Yeah, there's really no second bounce. Oh, it just doesn't have enough arc. And the trajectory is short too. I'm hitting the ball right at this spot every time. It just never goes deep, it won't hit your baseline. It doesn't have that kind of pressure, does it? In my hands, the feedback feels incredibly clear and crisp. High initial speed, high arc, and very forgiving. But with my power level, I would have just crushed him long ago with my old Fan ALC. There's just no power. After switching to the Hurricane rubber, I moved back to the mid-to-far court. The entire arc just dives down even more. The ball's trajectory feels like it just instantly dives down. The entire trajectory just dives down more sharply. It just drops instantly, and the trajectory is super low and flat. Basically, once you put some power into it. But it still doesn't feel like it's pushing me back enough. When I was looping with my own racket before, I feel like I can push you back. But with this blade, you're just blocking every single one of my shots. See, the ball cannot pass the net. It's kind of giving me that Viscaria vibe. Pushing it to the middle, it's starting to drop a bit. But the feel on contact is firmer than the Viscaria, so that makes the ball drop even shorter. You have to really work to create that arc. So I have to really muscle it. I have to really whip it to get it up. Alright, now let's switch over to the Golden Viscaria ALC, so you can all see the entire trajectory of the ball. And with a full swing, the arc really comes up. And after switching, even at its peak, the arc is still quite flat. And after the switch, the trajectory of the ball from the Viscaria and its second bounce after landing on the table are both noticeably higher than the Golden Label Fan ZhenDong's. It's way more spinning. It's super spinny and really pushes them back. And when I loop, it feels incredibly effortless. I can easily get the ball deep to my opponent's baseline. See, I can hold it down. With this paddle, I can really push it deep on you. With this one, it feels like I'm just constantly looping the ball deep on the table. Let me try this fin out. It feels like you don't have to lift the ball, and it just naturally creates this kind of trajectory. So you don't have to deliberately try to create it. After it lands on the table, you can also see that the whole trajectory is really good. But the backhand loop is actually pretty good, though it's not as powerful as the Viscaria's. I feel like it's not as aggressive as the Viscaria. The spin on the Golden Label fans, it feels even a bit weaker than the Fan ALC. Now for the Golden Label Fan ZhenDong. Let's compare the arc on this one. You feel like you have to really smash the ball solidly with the entire paddle to loop it. So you'd want to add a bit more brush, just to be safe. The overall quality of the shot will drop significantly. Alright, now let's have our second tester, Jian. Give it a try. Let's see what Jian has to say about this blade. Even when you try to loop it deep, the ball still tends to fall short. And it feels like the ball just can't get the arc right. I don't get it. I just can't push it out. Or maybe I just didn't hit it deep enough. And it doesn't have a lot of spin on it either, when the ball comes over. But it's not a dull thud. It's not like the muffled feeling of the Fan ALC, so, while some blades feel a bit dead, this one doesn't. It's very crisp. The feedback is quite clear. It's not like the Fan ALC, which is a bit muted. You know, the kind that's a little dull. This one isn't. Yeah, the DO9C doesn't have that problem. I'd rather take my own racket. No, it's not as obvious as the difference between the Weiss ALC and Gold Label Weiss ALC. There isn't that much of a difference, yeah. It feels like they just swapped the logo. The feeling I get is that it's basically just a different logo, or maybe just the handle. But it doesn't feel like it has the same high margin for error as Fan's blade. Oh, it doesn't have the spin potential of the Fan ALC, probably. Yeah, see, this one feels really solid. So, what's the deal with that one? This one feels really solid. This is Fan ALC. The Fan ZhenDong Gold Label feels a bit more transparent and direct. Or maybe it's because the blade hasn't really been broken in yet. The trajectory of the Fan ALC is a bit better than the Fan ZhenDong Gold Label. And then, when I tried it on the backhand, there wasn't much of a difference in feel. Overall, it doesn't have the same characteristics as the Viscaria. And when it comes to the backhand, there's not much of a difference in how it feels during a test hit. So, when you're playing from far away, the Gold Label's trajectory is noticeably better than the normal one. Then, for the Viscaria ALC, when you're playing from mid to far distance, you can clearly feel the power being absorbed. Now, let's talk about the backhand, because this blade has a firm, hard feel to it, so, when it comes to the backhand feel, it's actually designed to let the ball travel more. Compared to the Fan ALC, the feedback you get from this blade is a bit sharper, so it's actually quite lively and responsive. When you play with it, the overall feeling in your hand is that you really need to focus on hitting through the ball. In terms of backhand spin, it's much easier to generate that spin compared to the forehand. I think in terms of the basic backhand, you could say it's on par with the Viscaria. On the backhand, even though the overall arc you get, the trajectory isn't that high either. But the speed of the ball off the racket is a bit faster, especially its directional control. I think it's actually a bit better than the Viscaria, especially its directional control. The ball just doesn't feel that threatening to the opponent.
整个球到对手的压迫性还是不够高。
There's not much pressure, even when you gradually apply more power. When I step around to rip a forehand, the ball just feels really flat and lacks any bite. The main issue is that the spin just isn't there. I felt the same way when I was using the 09C. With the Golden Label Viscaria, I feel like this one has the most pressure out of all the blades. It feels a bit like I'm just throwing the ball. The second bounce of the ball is incredibly lively, and it's really spin. Plus, the entire trajectory of the ball was incredibly high. When I play wide to the baseline, I can basically hit the white line with ease, but this one is more stable. The directionality on the backhand is really good. The backhand is really well directed. It's got a bit of that Viscaria feel. It really shoots the ball out. So, when you really compare it to the Gold Label version ... it's much more forgiving than all of these. But in terms of the feedback you get in your hand, it's actually the mushiest one. When it comes to short ball control, the Golden Label FCD is probably the best butterfly blade I've ever played with. The most comfortable one for short ball control. This is probably thanks to its relatively hard surface feel. And that's what gives it such incredible control. Whether it's for short pushes, flicks, or loop drives, you can feel it across the entire blade. It just offers incredible control. The short game is excellent. Alright, so next up, we're going to put on K3 onto this blade. Let's see if there's any difference. So, let's put on a new K3 rubber here. Because some of you guys comments that it might be an issue with the K3 rubber, especially when you really put some power into it. The basic trajectory just dives straight down. There's just no arc at all. So, is it actually worth buying? In my opinion, the price is definitely way too inflated. Even for a price of $450, I would find it way too much. From a practical player's perspective, I probably wouldn't impulsively buy it either. But at the end of the day, this is Fan ZhenDong's first gold label blade, and that's totally understandable. But when it comes to Butterfly's blade, I'd even say that for their own brand, many blades in the 1,000 yuan price range are pretty much on the same level. It has some few strong points either, so you can see the comparison for yourselves here. Alright, that's all for this video. Thanks for watching. Feel free to share your thoughts on this one, the new Fan ZhenDong Gold Label. And of course, this video is all based on our own subjective feelings. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe.